Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Green Factor, a show where we talk about green design and the business of sustainability. I'm your host, Haris, the Green Carpenter, and today we'll be talking about selling for social enterprises. With me today, we have Sasibai Kimis. She is the founder of the award winning Earth Heir, and I'm lucky to have worked with her before with some projects. And today we are thankful that she's here to share her journey and some of the stuff, especially on selling for social enterprise. Hi, Sasi. How are you
Hi,
doing?
Hari. Thanks for having me.
Before we go into the topic for today, I think like most of us, the listeners and me want to know more about how your journey, because you've been in the corporate, you've been in NGO, and then like you've done so many things. So we'd love to hear more about what you do and your journey.
Sure. Normally, when I speak about my journey itself is like 20 minutes, so I will do a very summarized
Summary,
version.
summary.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, I grew up in Malaysia, and then we used to like when I was younger, like my parents would take us to India because we still had like my mom's mom lived in India, and so we used to go there for the school holidays and all that. And and then when living in my grandma's village and visiting some of the villages around there, it's like I mean, there's no flush toilets, there's no like tap water. You have to go to the well, you have to dig a hole for your toilet. You know what I mean? And not that those are bad things or anything, but it kind of made me realize that like our life in Malaysia, actually we're very privileged. We have like electricity at the flick of a switch. I mean, we don't even think about all these things, and so it kind of made me realize that our life here and my life is actually a very privileged one that a lot of people around the world don't have, right? And then as I grew up, I had some life experiences that were pretty difficult. I mean, that affected me deeply. And it was like I lost one of my grand uncles, like he died because his family was so poor and they couldn't take care of him. And then like I was in New York working in the Twin Towers, and my friend, he's the he's actually the only Malaysian that died in September 11th. Shankar, he was like my high school friend, and we were both like working in New York, and then the next day he's no longer there, and so I was just like, wow. I mean, like life is so it can change just in the next second. And then having this, and then with losing my friend Shankar, and then working in New York, where I just felt very disillusioned because I was 21, I was earning a lot of money, I was living in New York. I mean, you could say it was like wow, right? But inside of me, I was like, I can't ignore the things that I've seen and the like, and what I've experienced in India and the other places that I've been to. So I'm like, I can't live in this bubble and ignore all of that. So in my career, I kind of like moved between finance and then like trying to work with NGOs and finance and work with NGOs, because I was trying to find a way, like I know I want to help, but I don't know how. So and that's when like when I was living in Africa, and I was working with the UN, and I was working with an NGO there. And that's when like it really hit me. I was like, we have to find a way where we can keep making money and keep doing good. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. And then when I was like 29, 30, I came back to Malaysia. Part of the reason was because I was also like, after living many years abroad, I was like, there's no point in me complaining about Malaysia and talking about how our leadership sucks or our politics is rubbish, or, what I mean? Like, you're always complaining. So I was like, instead of complaining, maybe I should go back to Malaysia and try to make a difference and be some contribute to change in the country. So that's why I came back, and I actually worked with Kazana, because I was like, okay, Kazana is working on growing the nation's wealth, so maybe if I can contribute to that, it will help the whole country. That was my thinking. And so I joined Kazana, and I loved working at Kazana. It was great. It was a great introduction for me into corporate Malaysia. I met a lot of other young Malaysians who also came back to try and make a change in the country. So it was a great organization. But I was working really, really long hours. And one day, like, I fell asleep driving home, and my car, like, I mean, didn't get into an accident, but anyway,
Mm.
that was what made me wake up. And I started asking myself, like, if I had died that night, would I have been happy with the life that I've lived? Like, is this the life that I want to live and want to leave behind? So I started thinking about my legacy and did a lot of thinking, and I decided actually to take time off to actually quit my job. So I started traveling. I was in Hawaii learning like natural farming, and I was in Cambodia building schools teaching English. And that's when, like, I met with a lot of weavers, craftspeople who were struggling to sell their products, because the middlemen made most of the money. So they are sitting in a village and nobody cares about them, and they earn like very little money for their
Mm.
effort. So I was like, oh, this is not fair. What can I do? So that's when I started buying their products, and then I came back to Malaysia and started selling it to my friends and family. And I never intended to start a business. It was just something that I was doing to help. But I met with the impact investor, Dr. Kim Tan, and he was like, look, if you want to help these women, you really want to help them, you have to make this into a business. This cannot be a side gig. It cannot be a, like, fun thing for you. So then I was like, okay. So February 14, Valentine's Day 2013, I went and registered Earth Air. And so that's kind of how Earth Air began. And so we initially started working with artisans from outside of Malaysia because, to be honest, I was so ignorant as an urban KLite. I really didn't think there were artisans left in Malaysia. And in 2015, when we won the British Council Social Enterprise Award, so they were like, hey, Earth Air, we want you to go and create Malaysian products. And that's when I started traveling in Malaysia, and I realized, oh,
Mm.
wait, Malaysia doesn't have as many artisans as the neighboring countries, but these artisans also need help because our
Correct,
craft
correct.
products look the same like they have been for the last 10, 20, 30 years. You know what I mean? There hasn't been any innovation in the design or production and all of this stuff. So I was like,
Mm.
hey, maybe there's a lot of work to do here. And that's when, after 2015, we started focusing only on Malaysia. So now we purely focus on made in Malaysia. All our products are made here within Malaysia and made by like Malaysians and like refugees living in Malaysia. Yeah. So that's what we are focused on now. So Malaysian heritage.
Amazing, amazing story. Long, but like the journey that you have changed and brings you where you are right now. I would like to touch a little bit on like your frustration and you say like instead of complain, we do something, right?
Mm.
It's the same as me when I back in 2012. I studied the whole market for my industry, and I found out like okay, Malaysia is one of the largest exporter of wood products. So our industry is one of the biggest in the world, but we
Wow.
are not
I didn't
known to
know that.
be, yeah, we are not known to be sustainable. And for me, because my business directly relates with the forest, right? So it's like I worry a bit. And at that time, Malaysia has the highest deforestation rate in the world. So
Mm.
I didn't want to continue the way we do. And then at first I asked like, why is this industry one of the biggest, is one of the best, but nobody is doing anything about this sustainability thing. We have create a lot of waste. We don't care where the material come from.
Mm.
So after a while, I feel like okay, nobody is doing it. I should try to do it instead of just asking who should do it, right? The government or something, right? So let's do it. So that is when the start 2013 where we really started to go into it.
Mm.
And I think that is one of the thing that I find a lot of such social enterprises or entrepreneurs are being made through this frustration and like we feel that if not, there's no one doing it, so you need to start it, right?
Hmm.
So that goes to the next question, which is, why do you think social enterprise is the good model for the future, or why is it important?
I mean, I think it stems from my own like experience. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that NGOs are not good, and I'm not saying that like capitalist business is not good. I think there is room for both. Like, it is needed in a way. I mean, like, okay, let me take that back. I think NGOs are okay. NGOs are needed because you cannot monetize everything. There are a lot of like social needs and causes that is actually very hard to monetize, and it will remain on a charity welfare model, on a philanthropic model. But with business, on the other hand, I do think that business like there needs to be social capitalism, like needs to be good capitalism. Really, there's no way we can keep growing the economies of the world and like like the whole measurement of GDP of a country's success is based on how much we consume. Like how much are we buying, how much are we spending money, like that is the measure of the success of a company, I mean of a country, right? So it's like our whole mindset as a world is about making more, buying more, making more, buying more, right? And so we are all down that path. So if you want to go down that path, you can't keep doing what you're doing, like what you said. We're going to be cutting down everything we have, we're going to destroy all our water. Then then it's like, what are we left with? So if you want to grow, you have to start thinking about how am I making what I'm making, like how am I treating the people that I work with, how are my actions impacting the environment and impacting animals and the air and our water, like all of these things. So I really believe that the SE model needs to become the business model, like for all businesses. It's like,
Correct, correct, correct.
it can no longer be like, oh, we are a big company, we make money, and then here is our CSR budget.
CSR, the small
10,
part, right?
10%, yeah. 10% is our CSR budget, and then like, okay, we do whatever with it. I'm like, so I feel like the CSR needs to move internally already. Like you need to review your business model. How are you even making money? What are you selling? How are you treating your suppliers? What is your supply chain like? Is your supply chain ethical? Like how's your transport? Like everything, right? You need to examine. And not many companies are doing that or able to do that, right? So for me, that is what I feel the world needs to move into. If all businesses can do that, right, then you will see not all businesses will survive.
Hmm.
Only the businesses that have internalized social good into their business models will survive and will last the long term.
Hmm. So my understanding why social entrepreneur exists is like, normally when we talk about social causes or environment, it's always being pointed to government or NGO, right? Before this, and then like, for government they have their limitation and something that we cannot control. And
Mm,
for NGOs, they have the cause, they do a lot of things, but they are all depending on donation. So if
mm,
there's no donation, like during COVID, they a lot of their funds are being reduced, so they cannot do much.
yeah.
So it's in a way they are binded by the need to get funds. So what I'm seeing, like how why I decided to venture into this model is, I see like, okay, if NGO, we have to ask for money, right? But if business, we can build our business and we can use it to our cause. So that's why
Mhm.
we put sustainability in the core of our business, and we study the whole process, like what you say. We look at the material, the glue, the coating, the packaging, the people that work, the makers, the community, and even government. Right now, we work a lot of government on how we can promote sustainability. So in during that time, I saw that first it started off as a just a like not wishy-washy, but like a kind of like a social cause. But after a while, after a few years of seeing and implementing, there are a lot of ways where you can generate income. Like for example, if you sustainability is you reduce waste. So when you reduce waste, you either for us we make some product from it, so you get revenue. You do efficiency, cost saving, and all that. So even though we are pursuing something of social or environmental cause, we do benefit in terms of monetary. So that
Mm-hmm.
is why we need to see, or like talk, the new generation of entrepreneur needs to see that, not because we're doing something that is social or environmental cause is not going to bring money. It's just a different way of doing business. It's how we reclaim or make good capitalism, because
Yes.
capitalism are always being seen as the enemy of social and environmental cause. But right now we go to where the money is and use capitalism to fund our cause. So that's why I really believe in the social entrepreneurs. But I think there's a gray area between NGO and social entrepreneurs. So what's the difference, Sasi?
I mean, I think with NGOs, like I said, I think a lot of nonprofits actually do. I mean, they are doing a lot of good that nobody else in society wants to do, and a lot of what they do cannot be monetized. So, but there are NGOs that are seeking, like they are trying to monetize certain aspects of what they do. Like so for example, like the NGO that I worked with in Ghana, we were working with communities that lost their land to gold mining companies, right? So then the NGO, before we used to depend on donor funds like from USAID and all the big development agencies. So then my boss at the time, Carla, was like, hey, maybe we can go and do some consulting work for these gold mining companies and help them treat these people better, like help these companies figure out how to help these communities in their gold mining, in the gold mines. So we started a consulting practice within the NGO, which would then we got like these 5-year projects, these gold mining companies. We got paid, and that would then fund our non-profit work of like helping HIV/AIDS orphan and giving food to like orphan kids and all those things. So that's when I was like, it's not that the NGO model. So in a way, that consulting practice that we started was kind of like a social enterprise. And that's what it is. It's basic. A social enterprise is like any idea or business where you're like making money, but you're using that money to create impact. you know um and like what you said earlier about being efficient. I mean, I feel like as a social enterprise, like we have to be so efficient and lean and start because we have no we have no money. So we're like, oh my gosh, how to do everything like as cheaply as possible and as efficiently as possible and make money of like whatever you have. So you don't have the luxury of big budgets and big marketing budgets and all that. So a lot of people ask, like, thinking about like selling and all that, right? People ask me like, oh, what's your marketing budget? I'm like, actually, I don't really have any. Like, I haven't never really planned for a marketing budget. It's all like word of mouth and like because early on when I was building Earth Heir, I was like, wait, I really don't have much money. And then to even hire an employee, like hiring people, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna pay their salaries every month? Like all these things. And then I was like, well, I started thinking that maybe just think about doing good. I know it sounds very naive and idealistic, right? But I just told myself, if I keep doing good and I keep doing what I believe in, people will start seeing the benefits and people will start coming to us instead of us going around and begging people. Because initially that was what I felt like. I was like, oh, nobody cares about what we're doing, nobody bothers about what we're doing. And so I was like, but slowly, as you keep doing, right, and people start noticing what you're doing, and then you start getting more media attention. So, in fact, like all the media coverage that we have received and all of the speaking and stuff I do, like I have not gone out to get them. People come to us, so why? why do people come to you? So for me, right, the best marketing strategy is to stick to your principles and do what you're doing well, and and then things will happen. So yes, maybe that path is a much longer path for you to make money. It takes much longer to get recognition, but you will be able to survive through the ups and downs of the economy and the world. Yeah.
So that will be the next question. But before we go that, Tracy, hi Tracy, thank you for listening in. Some of the government departments and just don't even recognize SE. Is it true, or how do you see the future like?
Well, I think government, I think that like, so that's one of the things I was very happy with this year's budget. Like when Tengku Zafrul, our Minister of Finance, announced, after years of like fighting for for recognition of SEs, we are getting more recognized, and the government has now opened up the government procurement system. They've opened up a program for government agencies and ministries to procure from social enterprises, and
Is it
they've
under the
opened.
magic? Is it that one?
It
The
was
certificate?
originally under MOF, but now it's called, like, actually it's a PPISK, something like that. I can't remember, but it's basically a procurement system, like e-perolehan basically, but
Mm,
encouraging government agencies to buy from social enterprises. Yeah.
mm. So
So
encouraging and actually implementing too is something that we should see.
yes, PPKIS. Yeah, someone has just responded.
PPKS, yeah.
Yeah. So that's
So
the
yeah,
program.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, Kila, maybe next year can be like, okay, all government agencies have to procure 10% from social enterprises, something like that. I mean, I don't know, right? But
Mm,
that would be amazing because the government budget is huge, and if
correct,
they
correct.
can procure like up to 10%, whatever is possible from social enterprises, that would be great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say, okay, the government side is something that we can't really control. So that's why for us, before this, we do a lot work with government as well, but it's always uncertain because the standard and all that, right? So that's why I decided like 7 years ago we want to explore open market. So when we go open market and export, it's the wild west. But if your product is good, your marketing is good, your customer service is good, people will come to you. So this is where I heard a lot of people or a lot of business owners, especially SEs and green businesses, they said that Malaysia is not ready for green product and all that. And then I feel like it's not true. I feel like people will buy if your product is good and all that. So that's why now the question is on the sales process. Like, is it any different between like if we have a cost to our products and like if we don't, and or like how is it with you guys?
So, okay, so this is a very interesting subject because um, for me, very early on, I realized that people will buy a charity product once or twice, because
Mm,
they want to help the cause, right? They're like, okay, this is made by this community that needs help, whatever, right? So I'll buy this to support them. But you won't keep buying the product unless that product is functional and it's looks good and it satisfies the need that you have. So that's what you're talking about. So it always has to come back to your product or service has to be top class. Like it has to be good quality that can compete with what is out there in the market. And the fact that there is a story and a cause behind it is a bonus. So your marketing and the way you're thinking of your products, right, cannot be like, oh, I'm helping people, so you must buy from me. Like no one is going to care that you're helping people. They're like, ultimately that's consumer psychology. No one is going to come and help you because of that or buy from you just because of that. I mean, there may be some people, but it will be like a one-time purchase and then they won't buy from you again. So you want people that actually appreciate what you're doing. And initially, when I first started, like I was told, like, oh, ethical fashion, like who cares about? Like it's too expensive. nobody's gonna like buy ethical clothes or ethical fashion or whatever, and it was hard because you're right. Early in the early years, like people were like, why should I care about who made my product or whether the material is sustainable or whether you're impacting the environment or whether you're paying fair wages, or why should I care? Because right, if you think about all of these things, it increases the price of the product. And it does. But to me, that is the real price and the true cost of making that product. We cannot be making products by like, hey, let me make it in this small village in Vietnam where I don't have to pay people well, and then extract it from there and then do something in another country that is cheap and whatever and repackage it and
And
that's my.
then mark up it for like 4 times, 5 times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, like that is the current typical business model. Is like,
Correct,
you
correct.
know, get my products as cheaply as possible. Don't think about how it's made or who it's made, whether because for me, right, like I write stories about like, you know, why I started Fashion Revolution in Malaysia was also because of that. It's like 1,200 people died in a building sewing clothes for brands that we buy from, you know and then I read about like Tyson is like a frozen food brand in the US, that the people that work there, this is quite some time ago, didn't even get breaks to go to the toilet, so they would just pee in the toilet or they would wear a diaper, and I'm like, is this right?
Crazy,
Yeah,
crazy.
like,
It's
do you,
happening. It's a current thing, right? It's not like something that happened like 50 years ago, right?
yeah. So it's like, is this right? Like, is this the price that other people should pay for us to get the products that we want? No. Like, we cannot live like this and we cannot grow in this world like this. Yeah.
And but how do you differentiate yourself compared to, okay, because your competitors will be like something young, something, okay, if you say clothing or handbags or things like that, that is not sustainable. How do you the sale? I mean, like how do you promote it, or how do you,
Yeah.
yeah, how
Um,
is it, like word of mouth, or like there are
so
certain things you do that works?
first first thing was, of course, like, realizing that your product has to be good quality. And then
Mm,
second was me actually realizing that you need to create a brand. Like, you need to have a credible brand with like credible brand values, that and so people can look at the brand and then they understand what is the vision and ethos behind the brand, and that is very important. Because otherwise, like, you're just a generic product and people cannot understand like what's unique about your product, or so it sounds simple, but it's actually about making sure your logo and your design process is ethical, and then also your products are unique, lah, it's different. So when I first started Earth Air, I was literally like going to the villages, buying what the artisans had, and then reselling it, right? But then I quickly realized that, excuse me, anybody can do that. Like, anyone also can go to the village and buy the products and resell it. So what's so special about you? So then I was like, okay, I have to create my own designs that nobody else has. And then I realized, okay, we started doing that. Okay, then there may be people who copy your designs, right? Okay, how do you get around that? Then
mm,
what we started doing was we started making our products in many different places and adding different elements to it. So you can't copy it unless you know exactly what we do and where we do it with, who we do it with, right? So it's like thinking of all these things to make your product unique and different and hard to copy. That was one of the things. And then, of course, like, I mean, in the early years, I was like, the website all very chachat. Now the website is like
canggih ya.
a bit more proper. Like, we have a proper website. You can shop, you can use credit card, you can pay, and then
Hmm.
having the other thing that made a huge difference for Earth Air was actually having a physical space.
Hmm.
I know that we live in the world of e-commerce, right? But because we are a product and we have products that people need to touch to feel and see what it's like. Because we are not a like H&M, where like, okay, fine, H&M has shops everywhere, so everybody can go there and see, and then you can buy online. So, but for Earth Air, you just see the photo on the website, but then you're like, what does it actually look like in real life? You know what I mean? So, having a physical space made the other like huge jump for us, because then we could have our products there. Clients, especially corporate clients, and end consumers who are interested in what we're doing, could come, drop by, see what we do, look at our products, talk to us, learn about us. Like, so people connect with you and they engage with you. That also made a difference.
Mm.
And then, of course, like, I spend a lot of my time speaking. So, I was really sharing about why ethical fashion matters, why we need to change what we are doing. And so there was a lot of education, and I'm sure you went through this as well, like educating people about why sustainability matters in the timber industry and in the products that you're making. So it's like talking about that, educating people, so all of this helps to like grow awareness about what you're doing and what you're advocating for, and helps to like bring exposure and hopefully more sales up. Yeah.
Mm.
So you have to make it easy for people to buy from you. So that's like the website, your physical location, and then of course, like, the other sales processes that work is being an advocate for what you believe in, and talking about that, and so that more people will understand why this is important. So it's kind of like you're not just growing a brand, you are growing an industry, like as in you are growing an ecosystem for why people should buy Malaysian made artisan products. Like, you're
Mm.
literally trying to educate people about why that is important, and why ethical fashion and ethical supply chains are important. And now Earth Air is like right now the only fair trade certified organization in the whole of Malaysia, right? And I hope more organizations will join and be certified fair trade, because when you're certified fair trade, you're audited to make sure that you satisfy, um, you're not exploiting people, you're not using child labor, you're thinking about the environment, so all of these, that 10 principles of fair trade, and so I feel proud, like, that now when I talk to people about Earth Air, I can be like, okay, we are fair trade certified. So don't worry, we're not exploiting anybody. You can have confidence in buying from us. And
Mm.
and I think that is important, because Harith, we are not a regular business. What we are doing, right, it's not just, you're not selling any wood product. So for you, you have all your standards and certifications for your sustainable wood, right? So then people look at it and be like, oh, okay, this one is really certified sustainable. Okay, then
Mm.
I believe in what Harith is saying. Yeah.
Mm. Correct. I think summarizing what you say in terms of the sales process, it's not different than the traditional sense of business. So that's why, like, a lot of people, when they talk about, they think like SE is like more of NGO, and people will just buy from you because of the cost. But like you say, people might buy once. But what I would normally say when people think of you going into social enterprise is, you have to be aware that traditional business, they think about maybe like 10,000 stuff they have to think about, but social entrepreneurs, we have to think about like 20,000 stuff to think about, all the things. But it's good that you share that all the things that you do with the fair trade and all that. People think that it will incur a lot of cost. People think it might not work, but it works. So there is a formula, not say the formula. There is, it's something that is achievable. So that is why for me as well, when these few years we are seeing like, okay, we can profit and at the same time save the environment. So there's something amazing. That's why we've been sharing. And before this, before we get the certification, we when we talk about sustainability, people will ask, okay, you're doing sustainability, but what is your proof and all that? So certification does help. And are you going for the certified, the B Corp?
Yeah, so we started the process of getting that.
Who's gonna
So
be the first? Are you guys gonna be the first if you
no,
finish?
no, no.
I,
There's actually been another company in Malaysia that's B Corp already.
I
So
know, but they're not like consumer products, right? I mean, like, are they
no,
consumer
they're
products?
not. Yeah, they are not actually. I because we spoke to them like when they were trying to talk, like helping us through the certification. Yeah. So we are in the midst of it, lah. So the B Corp process, we
Nice,
are
nice.
actually quite overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed a lot
Yeah.
of me, but
Yeah.
we need to have those lah. I pun looking within this 1 or 2 years to get that as well alongside other sustainable certification. But it's not the issue of going for all this certification. It's about the process. The certification
Yeah.
helps us streamline our process and make it like better.
Mhm.
Um, we have a
Yeah.
question here.
So I was going
In
to answer this question with a
ah,
little bit with what you said as well, because
hmm,
when we had to go through fair trade certification, it took us more than a year of like because it was putting in a lot of compliance into our system and our processes of running the business and how we are working with the artisans. Like before, like we didn't have any agreements with the artisans. Then now we're, when we like were going through the audit process, they were like, oh, you need to have like sign agreements with the
correct, correct.
artisans,
The
like,
traceability, right? You need to make sure
yeah,
all
like,
the things are being
so,
recorded and
yeah.
being done, right?
And policies like you like all the things that you're doing right is in your head and you're already doing it but you don't have a written policy so
Mm.
it's like wow, oh my goodness, we have to write all these policies about this, but not using child labor, about this, that, so it's like writing policies and putting in the compliance and the processes and the documentation that you need to be part of fair trade. So for
So how do
anyone,
you register?
yeah,
The
so
question.
you can't just register. It's not like go to the website, register, you get a certification. So, but what you can do is go to WFTO website, which is World Fair Trade Organization, WFTO.org. You go there, and then you can actually get sign up, and then they will help you through the process lah. And of course, like because we are one of the fair trade certified organizations in Malaysia, you can talk to us as well. So you get the process started, so they will tell you like, okay, all the things that you need, you have this long checklist of like stuff that you need to have, and then after that they will actually send an auditor to come and audit your business. So they will look at everything, your financial statements, how much are you paying the artisans, like what are your materials, where is it coming from? Like they will process all of your, audit all of your supply chain and check your business. WFTO.com or .org?
.com.
Oh,
.org
okay.
a different website. That's why I checked first.
Oh, wow, they're .com. Okay, sorry. Yeah, because we are part of WFTO Asia. So because we are in Malaysia, we fall under WFTO Asia. So WFTO goes by different regions. They have WFTO Africa, WFTO India, and like yeah. So we are under Asia lah.
Mm.
So it was actually a very lengthy process, and it is not easy, and it costs money.
Mm.
So for us, going down that path was not an easy decision to make lah, because everybody in the team was like very tired because got so many compliance stuff that needs to be done. But once you do it, it's good. And then you have, I think every 2 or 4 years, you get another peer audit. You get, so it's not like you get it and then you simply sit and then don't do anything.
Mm.
Yeah, so you have a regular audit process, which is good, so that consumers know that all these companies that say what they're doing, they continue to do it lah.
Mm. I think the same as in my case, like when we do PFC certification, Europe certification that states that our wood comes from sustainable sources.
Mm.
The process is like quite lengthy. Meaning, like for example, you need to trace where the material come from. For example, it needs to come from sustainable forest, and the forest needs to be certified. The sawmiller that cuts from the forest needs to be certified, and for us, the producer needs to be certified. So if one of
Wow.
the chain is broken, we cannot even be certified. So that's why every year as well we are being audited and all that. So it's something that is for you to get assurance, right? So these are the things that when we put our feet where our mouth is. So I think we are at the end of
I love your
the
stuff,
show.
Harry.
Huh?
I mean, I love the stuff you guys make. So I mean, I think it's great, and
Yeah.
I'm really like
Yeah,
I think
Sasi is one of my clients as well, guys. Disclaimer. um, so it's my factory alarm. Okay, so we are at the end of the show. Thank you very much, Sasi, for your time, and for everyone who's tuning in. If you want to know more about Earth Heir, you can visit their Instagram and Facebook Earth Heir, or www.earthair.com. Or .my.
yeah, .com.
.com, and then do connect with her and the brand. Are you active on LinkedIn or Facebook more, or no
I mean,
social
I think
media?
we are more active on Instagram and Facebook lah.
Instagram.
LinkedIn we are there, but not so active.
Okay lah. So follow them and do support them, because they are doing amazing job and supporting a lot of craftsmen. I love the product. Recommend to you guys. And if you guys find value in what we are sharing, do share with your friends or family that might benefit from this, and be part of the community that make change. Like for us at Green Design Malaysia, do be part of us, where we talk about issues like local issues on how we can use design to be more sustainable, how green businesses or social enterprise can thrive in this new age of revolution. So, thank you again, Sasi, and for everyone else, thank you for tuning in, and have a green week ahead.